This is the eLearning Podcast, episode number 25.
They didn't have the advantage that we had. We
Oh,
had
yeah,
training, we had time, we had support. And the teachers that have had to go on last March or April and all of a sudden be online teachers without that support underneath them, I don't know how they did it, and they deserve all the credit they can get.
Welcome to the eLearning Podcast from lmspulse.com. My name's Stephen Laddick, and I'm the director at LMS Pulse. I hope you find my two very special guests for today as lovely as I have my whole life. Julie MacGregor and Gina Mallon have been teachers at different schools in the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School system for more than 10 years. Full disclosure though, they're also both my aunts. I thought it would be cool to invite them over for the podcast, not only because of their life stories and wisdom, but because of their tenured experience in two very critical issues in education today. One, naturally, is their transition from old-fashioned Catholic schools into fully virtual experiences. We take a fast-paced tour of all the issues involved in transitioning to online learning, including the fascinating approach they've taken to offer differentiated teaching for a broad variety of students, like special ed, gifted children, low income, adult learners, and sometimes they're all in the same classroom. The other issue is a bit more complicated. And I mean, what could be more complicated than COVID-19, right? Try charter schools. But since this is a family conversation, I'll just let you know that we touch on issues of diversity, access, and the importance of school choice for teachers who've been in it for most of their lives. In this family affair conversation, we talk about things like what it's like to be in online education and distance learning for over a decade, from their decision to become online teachers to getting comfortable and finding support to the answers for the perennial question of student engagement. We also talk about what it's like to be a special ed teacher online, where the same questions on engagement and effectiveness apply, but on a broader scale. Hint, it involves the students' parents. Why, despite their experience and skill set, the pandemic also affected virtual education teachers in particular ways, like socialization. But how COVID has also validated many of their lessons and has turned them into informal advisors and counselors among their peers. And finally, we talk about the interesting ways in which cyber or virtual charter schools address issues like equity and diversity when, by law, you simply have to take everyone in, and the many benefits that school choice has given students and families is seen from the vantage point of teachers over the years. But before we get started, a quick word from our sponsors.
The eLearning Podcast is sponsored by the eLearning Success Summit. Learn from more than 40 experts how to teach, work, and learn online without being overwhelmed. Get your free ticket to the summit at elearningsuccesssummit.com. And lmspulse.com, your best source for news, information, and resources for e-learning professionals for more than 10 years. Get our free roundup of the week's top news at lmspulse.com.
Hello, Julie and Gina. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Stephen.
Thanks for having me.
So you guys are, you're actually, I know this, you're kind of relatively close in the world, but where are you both located right now?
I'm in Downingtown, Pennsylvania.
And I'm in Parker Ford, Pennsylvania.
Awesome, Pennsylvania. I love it. For everybody who's listening, full disclosure right now, this is a family affair today. I couldn't resist this opportunity. Both of these women that you're looking at right now are listening to are my aunts. But here's the cool thing. Both of them are both educators, and both of them have also been online educators for quite a while now. Julie, why don't you start with, we'll start with you. Why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself? How long you've been teaching online? What do you teach? Give us kind of, who are you?
Well, I've been teaching, I figured out, for 48 years this year, which is kind of scary.
Nice.
And I've taught all grade levels, but I've been teaching in a cyber school for the last 13 years. And in that school, I've taught elementary, 3rd grade, and I've also taught high school English, a couple different grades. Right now I'm teaching English 10.
English 10. Wow. So, but and what blows my mind about that is that everybody thinks that e-learning is something new because of COVID for some reason. And you've been doing it for 13 years. That's fantastic. All right. We can talk about To Kill a Mockingbird later. Gina.
Yes.
How long have you, tell us about who you are and how long have you been teaching online and been in the education business?
Okay. I've been a teacher. This is actually about 20 years this year. And I've been in cyber, actually 21 years. I've been in cyber for 10 years. And I have been a gen ed teacher, general education teacher. I have been, but for the past 10 years, I've been a special education teacher online.
Mm,
And I am about to move into a reading specialist position.
okay. I'm really interested to hear, how do you do special ed virtually? You know, just, I would think that that is a
Well,
hands-on deal. So I'm interested to talk about that. Um,
okay.
Before we dive in there though, the first question I have for you is, okay, so Julie, 13 years, Gina, 10 years. This, you know, in terms of everybody who's listening to this right now, this is forever ago. What was the first leap to get you online, to pull you out of a traditional classroom and say, look, I want, you know, was the opportunity presented to you? Was it a life situation? Did you you're like, wow, this is the future, this is where I want to go? Let's start with Gina this time. Like, why'd you make that choice?
Well, it was kind of made for me in a sense. I had been teaching for 11 years in a parochial school, not a public school, a Catholic school, and I wanted to get into public education for lots of different reasons. You know, salary, opportunities, and a way to expand. And so I was probably at that time, you know, midlife crisis, and you know, a lot of districts didn't want to hire me because I was older, had more experience, and they would have to probably pay me a little
Sure.
more. And so, but the cyber opportunity came to be, and it was a special education job. And although I was certified in special education, I had never used it. So I was a little nervous going into that, but they were very supportive, and I learned a lot over the last 10 years about special ed, and pretty good
Nice.
at it, I think.
So like so many people, you kind of stumbled into it. Like, it wasn't something you
Exactly,
were seeking,
exactly.
but it
It
was
was
like, wow,
just,
it just all kind of worked out.
it did. And actually, Julie had been working in her job for a couple years when I applied for this, and we're in different schools, by the way. And but he had already been doing virtual, and so I thought it was kind of interesting. So I didn't want to limit myself, and so I applied for a couple different positions and got one.
Awesome. And what about
Yeah.
you, Julie?
Mine was a life situation. I was working for 2 public school districts part-time. So I had no benefits, I had no retirement, and I was looking for a full-time position. And, you know, this was a friend of a friend who knew somebody said, oh, they're looking. And literally I got a phone call one day and said, hey, we're looking for you. So
Well,
here I've been.
okay, so but here's some, you know, 13 years ago, I mean, that's almost pre-Facebook, right? Like, so
Mhm.
and I don't want to say, you know, like, let's not make any assumptions here, but you know, you didn't come with computer skills, you didn't come with like coding skill. Like, this wasn't something that, did they just, you know, at that time, did they just offer you this training and you know, they kind of gave you all the pieces to get set up and get going, or and that's just how it worked? Or
I had a lot of training. At the beginning of every year, we always got together, and whatever our new platform was going to be or whatever, we were trained in that. But I always tell people that the learning curve for this particular job was like this. It was the hardest
Yeah.
I've ever worked at learning how to do something.
So,
And
you
I,
know,
you know, more than once threw up my hands and said, I'm too old, I can't do this. But it's an interesting place to work. Our students are interesting. The people I've gotten to know, the skills that I've learned and been able to share with others has just been phenomenal.
The same with you, Gina? Did you have that same experience where you had just a huge learning curve, or did you come in with the tech skills already?
well, I came in with some technical experience, you know, using the basics and knowing how to email people and using Word and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, using the systems that we use, using Blackboard, using our management system, our student management system, and all that. And that was, yeah, it was vertical. Yeah. And, you know, and I've been a mentor probably to 3 or 4 different teachers, and every year that happens, it's people go into a major panic, and you've been there, so you kind of talk them off the ledge. And
well, this is for both of you, this was 10 years ago, let's just say, like 10
yeah.
So what I'm trying to like make the connection there is, for you were super early adopters, and the opportunity was present, you did, and you found, wow, I got so much to learn so fast. And here we are, 99% of the world just had to do that, right? So I'm trying to create the context. Suddenly like everyone had to do it, right? And so
right, exactly,
really get what that shift entailed.
And excuse me, I just wanted to say that they didn't have the advantage that we had. We had training, we had time, we had support. And the teachers that have had to go on last March or April and all of a sudden be online teachers without that support underneath them, I don't know how they did it, and they deserve all the credit they can get.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you guys have still communities in sort of that were physical, like classrooms and whatnot? Have you heard from them? Like, what? Give me 2 seconds on. Was it just like, oh my God, or what?
I work my neighbors, just on my street alone, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teachers, 6 including myself. So just on my little cul-de-sac. Yeah, really. And probably only 3 of them are classroom teachers, and one's a music teacher of those 3. But they were beside themselves trying to do this, and trying to keep it manageable, and get all their kids involved, and so
awesome.
It was interesting. I was kind of like, yeah, welcome to my world.
What about you, Julie? Do you still have a big community in the physical world, or?
I do. I have friends that are teachers, and there was a lot of anxiety. I mean, a lot of anxiety on, number 1, how do we do this? Number 2, how do we keep the kids involved? Some school districts didn't know what they were doing. They were only meeting with kids once a week. The teachers were saying this isn't enough. So all last spring was a great time of stress for traditional brick and mortar classroom teachers. And I could feel their pain, but unfortunately I couldn't do much to change it. So
I had a friend from when I was taking my master's back in 5 or 6 years ago, and she contacted me on Facebook, and she said, I remembered you're a virtual teacher. What do I do?
I can only imagine, man. You guys are like the rock star experts. You must have had all kinds of contacts like that. What's the, just for everyone who's listening, you guys are both in Pennsylvania, not super rural Pennsylvania. No, you're not sort of, way out in the sticks or anything like that. I know where you live. What's your student population like? Are they coming from a particular district? Do they come from anywhere in Pennsylvania? Is it anywhere around the world? Like, who are you teaching?
Our students are, in both of our schools, our students are from anywhere in the state of Pennsylvania. Okay. So we're in charter schools. So when there's a cyber charter, they can draw from anywhere in the state. They have to have their permanent residence within the state. So, and we have teachers all over the state as well. So we do a lot of face-to-face events, for testing, or for just, back to school nights, and having, renting of facilities in different areas of the state where teachers could go and kids could go and meet each other. And so there was some face-to-face interaction.
Fantastic. And what's the makeup of the students? Are you seeing essentially a traditional classroom? Where these are just kids who don't have access to, I guess that's another great question too. Like, why aren't these kids going to a traditional school? Maybe Julie, you can tell us that.
Students that we have follow a wide range. They're students who are academically accelerating, getting through high school, for example, in 3 years instead of 4, sometimes taking college courses while they're doing that. They're students who are in the fine arts, ballet dancers, actors, singers. They need some kind of flexibility to their schedule. There are students who have been bullied and beat up in their school districts. There are students that are afraid to go to school. There are students who have health issues. From diabetes to cancer. and traditional schools don't work for them. And any student who feels, I mean, we have students in the middle of north central Pennsylvania where they might have to be on a bus for an hour before they even get to school. So this is better for them.
Mhm.
Parents have more control, they feel, and they're not at the risk of what might happen in Philadelphia or Harrisburg or Pittsburgh, you know, in the school districts that are large and have difficulty.
Sure. Okay. And so go ahead, Jeannie. You look like
Oh, I was going to say, just to kind of give you a rough idea, my school, at least, excuse me, our 30% of our population is special education, and probably
Define
about
that for people who aren't familiar. Like, what does special education mean? It just means that you tell me.
Well, special education is a student who's identified. They've been tested. They have special needs in some area, whether it be autism or a learning disability, or sometimes even medical disabilities, so that they require specially designed instruction.
Okay.
So that's a pretty high percentage for a school to have, is for special education. Other thing is, which is amazing, is 70% of our student is lower income students, that if they were going to public school, they'd be qualifying for free lunch program, that kind of thing. Like that. So that's another amazing statistic, I think.
Sure.
So that kind of tells you the socioeconomic breakdown of our schools.
So yeah, I kind of have like three questions now. But I'm going to go backwards to forwards. So if let's just say 70% are from sort of a lower socioeconomic platform, we're talking high-end computers, internet connections, other pieces of technology, and how are these families affording this? Is it provided by the district and by the school, or like how?
No, I'm sorry, not by the districts they live in. It's provided by us. So we provide students with a computer or a printer, a headset. We pay for their internet connection if they need it, or if they need a hotspot, because they're in a place where they don't. So we provide all that because we're a public school, and so we need to give them free access. We can't deny a student because we're public school. So we have to accept everyone. As far as our resources, this year we had to stop because our resources
ran out.
Yes, completely ran out. But we provide that for students so that their education is still free, just like it would be if they went to their neighborhood school.
Okay, and that's same for you, and Gina, in your.
Yes.
Okay, so both in the public system. So so we understand how they have access, but now, Julie, you were kind of describing, high performers. At the same time, we have, a huge percentage of children who have, really specific needs and probably aren't those high performers. How does that mashup work? Is it high performers in one class and this and that, or is everybody in individual instruction, or what does it look like? Maybe Gina, why don't you take that one?
Well, well, we have, and Julie's school is structured kind of the same way, a little bit different, but we have most of our students are what we call synchronous learners. That means they go to a live session. They're with a teacher probably for 3 or 4 classes every day. And, it's just like a regular classroom. We assign lessons, we do independent work, we have instruction, but we also have asynchronous learners. And in my school, being an asynchronous student is kind of a privilege. You sort of have to apply for that, and it's not given to everybody. So those would be the students who are probably, they're self-paced, they can follow a curriculum, they're motivated, they're ready, they have a good support system at home. But we also do asynchronous status for some students who have special needs as well, because they have medical issues, they have to be at a doctor's office, and it doesn't, we don't take attendance the same way for asynchronous student. They just have to log in during the day. They don't have to actually be in a class, because when they're synchronous, they get attendance taken.
I was going to say contact hours.
Each class, yeah.
Okay.
So, and yeah, so I think that's how it's separated. We also have, I'm in elementary school, least in high school. In our elementary school, we have an advanced learners program. So we have students who qualify for that. We have a elementary level junior national honor society. So we have students who qualify for that. We have honor society in high school and middle school. And we have AP courses in high school. So we have everything that, a regular district would have to meet the needs of, advanced learners and also those learners that need extra support.
So, Julie, how the heck do you guys do this? Right? Like, so, and this is a genuine question. I mean, we've all heard it, especially since COVID started. Everybody on the show knows I got 3 kids. You have now described all 3 of my children. I have a high performer who could totally do the asynchronous stuff, right? He is self-motivated. He gets it done. He's our rock star. I have someone who needs care and attention. And, if we leave the other one alone, for 2 seconds, gone. And then I've got a third one who's kind of a mix of both. We're not really sure yet. Give me a sense. What's it like? How does this change your teaching style? Like, what do you have to do differently as an online teacher as opposed to being in the classroom? How do you, what do you do to build an engaging lesson? What are the sort of expectations for, student involvement, especially, with asynchronous versus, synchronous learning? Julie, why don't you give that a shot?
Well, I have all synchronous classes. So my high school students come into my class, at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever their time period is, they're with me for 50 minutes, just like they would walk into a regular English classroom. And within that group, I can have students with IEPs or 504s that need special attention. I can have gifted students. I have obviously all the kids in the middle. So for 2 of my classes, I have a co-teacher who's a special education teacher. And those classes tend to have a few more children with special needs. And we balance that out between us. We team teach, we break into groups, we do reading rooms, we do all kinds of things to help support while letting the brighter kids continue on, so you don't hold anybody back. So when you provide lessons, you have to cover that whole gamut of learners and then keep them engaged the entire time. So as I go through the slides, when I prepare slides for class, as I go through them, has to be lots of opportunity with write your opinion on the board, raise your hand if you don't agree with this, give me a green check or emoticon of some kind. So constantly getting their involvement, read the slide for me, tell your friends what you think about that issue. To Kill a Mockingbird. So when we create our lessons, we have to create almost extra participation in them. If you're walking in a classroom, you can tap on somebody's desk and say, put that away or whatever, as you're walking up and down. We can't do that. So our voice, because the kids don't see us all day long, and we don't in my school, we don't see our students. I turn my camera on for a while, but I get very easily distracted by it, so I shut it off. So all my engagement has to be my lesson I've planned and my voice. And I have to control and engage and do everything I do through those 2 things.
So you don't have a video requirement.
We have cameras and we can turn them on, and our lessons are taped every day. So any of our administrators can go in and hear what I've said, see what I taught. And the good thing, though, which was kind of weird in the beginning, but the good thing is if a student misses a class or doesn't understand something I've said, they can go back and look at the recording. They can look at that section where I explain what the difference between plot and theme or whatever the idea might be. So, but we don't have requirement that our cameras are on all the time.
Interesting. What about you? Do you have that requirement at all? And the only reason I ask is because for my children, there's a camera requirement that, they have it on, and that's how they are testing whether or not the student is engaged and whether they're actually in the class and those kinds of things.
Well,
you mean your children have cameras on?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we used to allow that in our school, that the kids could put their webcams on, but we have control over that. We can give them permission. Through Blackboard, we can give them permission to have that on or not have it on. but there actually became a privacy issue with students having their cameras on. So, but the teachers can always have theirs on.
Okay.
So I use mine for a little while during class, but I want the kids to not be focused on my face. I want them to see focus what's on the board and what I'm explaining. So yeah, it's pretty much exactly what Julie said. It's you're engaging them with your voice, and you have to be animated, especially with the littler kids. You have to be kind of animated, and we're required to, we're judged by the same standards as every other public school teacher in the state of Pennsylvania. So we have to differentiate, and we have to make lessons engaging, and so our students stay on top of what they're supposed to be staying on top of.
So Gina, what's the number one, maybe give you your top two challenges as an elementary school teacher? Is it getting the kids to just show up on time? Is it turning in assignments? Is it making sure that you have that one kernel of knowledge that you're supposed to do for the class that you're imparting to the student? Like what's that big, is there a big one or two challenges that you have?
Well, I would say my biggest challenge, and still even after 10 years, is engagement, student engagement. But I would say that a lot of the students who participate on their own, but like Julie said, you have to constantly, do those checks, every so often throughout class to make sure they're there, write in the chat, answer this, we have different games we can play, like we do a waterfall, and everybody types in the chat, and then I turn the chat on and everybody hits enter and it all shows up on the chat box, so they get a kick out of that, and so little things like that get them engaged. But then there's those kids, there's probably those handful of kids in the class that you cannot get to answer you can't get them to do their work, you can't, it's just hard. And I know I am a co-teacher I teach ELA with my co-teacher, and we'll take turns, calling parents, say, your kid's in class, but they're not doing anything, and, so we really need you to help get them engaged and to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and not playing on YouTube or, having a game up or playing on their phone or whatever. And sometimes it's very hard. Sometimes it's very frustrating, because then, some of those kids might be the one at the end of the quarter saying, well, how do I get my grade up?
So you've kind of taken me to those two great issues. Julie, why don't you speak to this, like parent involvement, right? Again, from experience. I work full time. My wife works full time. We've got 3 kids who are on online class. I'm losing hair. It's going great by the day. And it's constant frustration, because how do we, having one kid would be tough enough, but then you gotta spread it amongst 3, like different schedules, different classes, and my 6-year-old gets about 25 emails a day from the school, just from Google Classroom, right? You can't keep up with it, right? So Julie, how do you work with parents? How do you coach them? Especially, again, I don't want to generalize or lay a sort of a coating on anyone, but if we're dealing with potentially like a lower income set, I'm assuming these people are working as well. They probably don't have, maybe they're actually leaving to go to jobs. Like, talk to me about that.
I have students who have to work. I have students with children. I have students who are facing all kinds of life issues. But when they come to our school and are interviewed by our staff, one of the things that, I used to do interviews, one of the things you have to make clear is this is a school where there has to be parent involvement. There has to be a partner at home. And if at all possible, even our high school kids should not be home alone. It's the easiest thing to fall asleep or go get a meal or any number of things my kids do, because I can't see where they've gone. So, but I have to say that when I call home and say, there's a problem because so-and-so has been in class for 20 minutes and hasn't responded to anything I've said, by and large, people respond. Parents,
Mm.
if they're not home, they call them. If they are home, I can hear knock, knock, knock on the door. What are you doing in there? So I would say when our parents are pretty mindful of the fact of what you said. I've got to keep at least part of my mind going on what my kid or kids are doing. It's hard for my high school students, much harder than I felt when I taught elementary school. These students have a myriad of challenges, and COVID has only increased. We have kids with anxiety and kids with depression, and the uncertainty of the world right now has increased all that. And so we really, on top of all the other things that we have to do, we have to be clear to them that we are a safe place. We're a place they can come, they can be trusted within our care. And that's very hard to do online. But I think after a certain number of weeks, the kids begin to understand that you are trustworthy, that you'll listen to them even if they disagree with you, etc.
So on that note, Gina, again, we're all in this situation now, but how does socialization happen in these particular types of schools, this online environment? I mean, in a school class, in a traditional school, kids go out to recess, they talk in the hallway, they have their buddies. I know that, again, not to talk about myself, but we've been online now for 8 months. My kids are dying to just have peers around, right? Like, how does that work? You've been doing it for a decade.
Well, it's really challenging for us too now, because as I said earlier, for my school, we would provide, opportunities for kids to get together. And we have a position at our school called a family coach, and they're kind of like a liaison between the teacher and the family. And those people are, again, throughout the state, but they would set up ice skating adventures and go to the zoo and those kinds of like field trip type of things, or go to the museum. And, they would set up different college, where the high school kids could go and, talk to college recruiters and things like that. We can't do that now, even. So it's hard. But even within my classroom, like when I'm having my small group in the afternoon, I give the kids like 5-10 minutes at the beginning and end of class, hey, chat's on, just your thing, chit chat, and and we'll, like, I haven't really started yet, but like during the year I'll do like Fridays, maybe just doing some fun things where the kids can interact. And this year we're having a big push on literacy, so I think we're going to have some fun things that the kids can do there too, as far as reading books and starting up some book clubs, and where they can socialize in a sense, and discuss some books and stories.
Julie, what about you on the sort of the
Your
10th
hand
grade
was
side?
raised, yeah.
Very nice, thank you.
That's what teachers do. We actually have, for all levels of education, clubs that our kids belong to. At the high school level, there's about 20 of them. And so from photography and newspaper, the kind of usual, we have an equine club.
No kidding.
We have a 4-H club. Now, these kids are in all different parts of the state, but they all enjoy this one thing, and so they share what they're doing with their horse or their rabbit, or, they produce a newspaper every month. And so the clubs really help the kids get involved in things that are with other students that are like-minded. So they make friends that way. And as Gina said, at the beginning and end of class, the kids have the opportunity to chat with each other. Some of them say, hey, are you the Stephen from my algebra class? And then they realize, because they don't look at each other's last names too much. So they connect that way. And then when at the beginning of the year, a lot of the teachers put a map of Pennsylvania up, put a dot in your initials where you live. And they say, hey, wait, I live not that far. And they connect with each other that way. Right now, all of that is online instead of, like Gina said, field trips and things. But I think our club system helps a lot of kids get to know each other.
Mm.
And Stephen, you would like this. We even have a Lego club.
I love it.
Mhm.
Legos. So the question I want to ask, and I don't know if this is a curveball or not, but Gina, everybody right now is talking about the new normal, right? For you
Yeah.
guys, this has been normal for more than a decade.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a real chasm that we're crossing right now, or is this something that we're making up just because so many people are put in a position of crisis? Like what? I'm not sure exactly what question I'm asking, other than what do we need to do to be successful at this, or is this something that we shouldn't even be attempting in terms of a global virtual online education system?
I think I know what you're getting at. I think there are many districts that are starting some kind of cyber education only because they know what we do. They don't want to lose students from the district, and so 'cause they do, because we're charter schools. And but I think they're trying to start up, but it hasn't been quick enough to support what happened back in the spring. And they don't do it the same way we do it. Most of their students are asynchronous, they're self-paced. Here's your books, here's your lessons, go at it, so they don't have live instruction. So, I think you're going to see more districts probably gearing that up a bit. But I also think this has been a learning experience, hopefully, for the public and for not to for districts, school districts, not to get political, but they have we've kind of gotten, I don't want to be, we've kind of gotten into a niche where people put us, in a stereotypical kind of situation. Oh, cyber schools there,
The misfit.
and I think that now people actually are learning what we actually do. At least most of our schools. I'm not saying all cyber schools are alike. They're not. Believe me, they're not. And
Sure.
if anybody's going to do a cyber, they need to do their homework, or they're going to